There's a response that comes up almost every time someone talks about older anime online. Someone mentions a classic, someone says it still hits different, and then, reliably, someone else says, "That's just nostalgia. You're not being objective." It's a tidy explanation. It accounts for the feeling without having to take it seriously. If everything you love about an older show is just a memory, wearing a costume, then there's nothing to examine. You can file it under personal attachment and move on. But here's the problem with that. Nostalgia requires a past. And a lot of the people going back to older anime right now, discovering Haibane Renmei for the first time in their 20s, sitting with text no lies on a quiet evening, watching Clannad or Mushishi years after the discourse around them faded. They didn't grow up with these shows. They have no childhood to return to, no memory of watching them on a CRT in a dark room. They just found them, and something in them held. So if it's not nostalgia, what is it? That's worth thinking about slowly. Let's be precise about what this isn't. This isn't an argument that older anime was objectively better. It wasn't, across the board. Plenty of older anime was lazy and formulaic and has aged poorly in ways that matter. And this isn't an argument that modern anime lacks depth. There are modern shows doing genuinely difficult work. This is about something narrower, a quality that a certain kind of older anime had that modern anime tends not to prioritize. And the fact that audiences, including younger ones, who have no particular attachment to the past, keep gravitating toward it. The simplest way to say it, older anime often felt patient. Not slow in a way that was careless, patient in a way that was deliberate, comfortable, existing between major events, willing to let a quiet scene be quiet, not afraid of a moment where nothing was being explained or resolved or advanced. The story could just be for a little while, and somehow that space made everything around it feel heavier, more real, more earned. Modern anime, almost as a rule, doesn't do this. Not because the people making it are less talented, but because the systems around them have made patience feel like a liability. Here's what streaming changed. When a show is competing for attention in a world where something else is always one click away, every episode becomes an argument for itself. The opening minutes have to justify why you're still here. The middle can't afford to lose momentum. The ending has to give you enough forward pull that you hit play on the next one. The result is pacing that's optimized for retention, not resonance. Scenes are tighter. Exposition is faster. Emotional beats arrive and get resolved quickly so the story can keep moving. The mechanics are clean and efficient, and they work. People do keep watching. But efficiency and depth are not the same thing, and over time, the difference becomes felt even if it's hard to name. Haibane Renmei is a useful example here because it's almost a document of a different set of priorities. Nothing much happens in that show for large stretches. Characters move through their days. There are questions the show raises and then doesn't answer. About who the Haibane are, what the walls mean, what lies beyond them. The story trusts those questions to carry weight without explaining them. It trusts the atmosphere of the town, the rhythm of daily life, the small textures of how people treat each other to do work that a more modern show would assign to dialogue or plot. And the result is a show that gets inside you quietly, not through shock or spectacle, through accumulated feeling. People who discover it now, with no prior connection to it, describe it the same way people always have, as calming, haunting, personal, something that felt like it was made for them specifically, though they can't say why. That's not nostalgia. That's a story that was built to actually land. There's something worth naming about modern attention culture here, because it's not just anime that shifted. Digital life over the last decade or so has trained people to make fast decisions. You see something, you assess it quickly, you keep scrolling or you don't. The cost of moving on is low. The pressure to stay is high. And this trains a certain reflex, a low tolerance for anything that doesn't immediately declare its value. Atmospheric storytelling doesn't declare its value immediately. It accumulates. The first episode of something like Haibani Renmei or Mushishi doesn't grab you by the collar. It opens a space and invites you into it. If you're in the habit of needing to be grabbed, you'll miss it entirely. So what's interesting about the rediscovery of older anime is that it seems to represent, at least for some people, a conscious turning away from that reflex. Not a rejection of modern media, more like a search for relief from it. People describe watching certain older shows at night, alone, away from their phone. The conditions are deliberate. They're creating the space the show needs because they've learned that without that space, it doesn't work. And they want it to work. That wanting says something. Because what it says is that the hunger for slow, immersive, emotionally sincere storytelling hasn't gone away. It's just harder to feed. Here's the thing about revisiting a story versus discovering one. They're not really different experiences. When you go back to something you loved years ago, you don't actually return to the same work. You return to it as someone else. The plot is the same, the characters are the same, but you change, and what you notice changes with you. When you're younger, you see the surface. You track what happens. You feel the big moments. Later, sometimes much later, you see what the story was actually about. The loneliness underneath the plot. The fear that wasn't named. The way a character chose wrong in a way you understand now that you couldn't have then. The quiet human details that were always there, waiting for you to be ready. This is why certain stories get stronger with time. Not because they change, because you do. And it's why the rediscovery of older anime isn't really about the past at all. It's about the present. About finding in something old a set of emotional tools you couldn't access before, or a kind of storytelling that meets you where you are in ways that newer things don't. You don't revisit those stories. You meet them again as someone different. And sometimes they have more to say to that person than they did to the one who first found them. So maybe the fans going back to older anime aren't making a statement about the past. Maybe they're making a statement about what they need right now, what modern media isn't giving them, what they've figured out, consciously or not, that they have to go looking for. Not louder stories, not faster ones, just stories willing to sit with human emotion long enough for it to actually do something. The question, why do people go back to older anime, turns out to have a more interesting answer than nostalgia. Some of them are returning to something they love. Some of them are discovering it for the first time. But in both cases, what they seem to be looking for is the same thing. The feeling that a story was made for a person, not an algorithm. That someone built it with the patience to let it breathe, and trusted that the audience would breathe with it. That feeling is rarer now. Not gone, but rarer. And the fact that people are willing to go searching for it, to dig past decades of newer options to find something that might give them that. Say something real about what stories are actually for. Not just to fill time, not just to entertain. To make you feel, for a little while, like something in the world was made with care, like someone was paying attention to what it means to be a person, like the silence between scenes holds something worth sitting in. That's why certain anime never really disappear, because that feeling doesn't have an expiration date.